Well, the Pac-12 might need to be plotting, but right now, they just need to wait a little bit.
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. Realignment, coaching carousel, the portal, all that and more. We've always got you covered. We'll check in Salt Lake City with JT Wistrcill of Locked On Utes later on the show. And how good could Dylan Raiola be in the Big Ten? Probably better than you'd think, given the competition around him at that position. But we start with I guess we'll still call it Conference of Champions, the Pac-12, who I have been on record many a times saying I think is going to rebuild in some form or fashion in a couple of years. All the timing lines up. Their affiliation with the WCC, scheduling partnership with the Mountain West, the ending of the Mountain West media rights deal with Fox and CBS, and I'll get to media rights a little bit later on as well. But right now, Teresa Gould, the commissioner of the Pac-12, has got a 2-year contract as well. So she's kind of got to go if she wants to, make stuff happen to give herself a conference to still be the commissioner of, and she's got the opportunity to do it. The war chest is getting padded thanks to the NCAA tournament units, and it's now getting close to $300 million for the league to pay exit fees and get teams over and all that stuff that comes with conference building there. But right now, the Pac-12 should be in wait-and-see mode, because the ACC is where all the realignment focus is right now, and understandably so. The outcome of the lawsuits with Florida State can determine a lot. If there is a set number, let's say Florida State and Clemson, who have similar lawsuits, they're not joint lawsuits, they are separate ventures against the ACC, I guess to spread Jim Phillips' legal team thin, I don't know. But certainly, that's not going to be the most ideal situation. You'd rather have it all consolidated, right? I thought it was all about consolidation. Okay, anyway, I don't know that much about the legal system. I know something, maybe, possibly. Okay, so the ACC is fighting those lawsuits, and let's say that it comes down to a settlement number, which is, what my prediction is, and that's just based on what I know, what I see, maybe a thing or two that I hear, that it's going to come down to a number, but that is certainly not set in stone, as I talked about on yesterday's show. There is a possibility, however remote, that Florida State and Clemson lose the lawsuit altogether, and they have to stay in the ACC, and they're bound by the grant of rights. So if the ACC has these two schools leave and it comes down to a number, let's just say, for the sake of argument and ease, $150 million, well, if Florida State and Clemson leave, Miami and maybe North Carolina, maybe Virginia even, what about Georgia Tech? Could they look to go to another conference? Could they try and find the money? Not saying every one of those places necessarily has the ability to make such a move, but let's say that were to happen. Let's say it's just Florida State and Clemson. And let's say they go to the SEC. Well, now the Big Ten's got to make a move. So let's say the Big Ten goes to get Miami. They bring with them North Carolina, Duke, and Virginia, all of which academically feel like Big Ten schools. Well, if the ACC were down to that few teams, well, in the Big 12, it feels like what pounds on Pitt and Louisville at least. And if other schools are just kind of left out in the woodworks, and you're thinking about how to build the best group of 5 conference possible if you're the Pac-12, which is the only path forward to a Pac-12 rebuild, would you like to have schools on the East Coast? I think you would. I think you would, and you want to have a national conference if possible. And Washington State President Kirk Schultz has been adamant in statements over the last couple of weeks and months, and he's now got to hire both an athletic director and a men's basketball coach, which is just tough, to say the least. So he's busy with that right now. But if he is, dead set in his belief that there should be a premier West Coast-based conference, I think that he needs to have someone sit him down and have a real honest conversation about, okay, in theory, what you're saying is correct. Unfortunately, the world we live in does not allow for that to be our best option forward. And if you had a conference that was Like, if the ACC were to fold because too many teams left and you had teams left to, try and find their own homes, and the Big 12 said, we'll take just Louisville and Pitt, maybe they take two more. Some combination of the Syracuse, Wake Forest, Boston College, NC States of the world are going to be seeking some sort of conference home. That's where you want to be able to insert yourself if you're the Pac-12, if possible. You want to be able to go to the best teams in the Mountain West, maybe a couple teams out of the American Conference as well, and try to put together the best league you could. And by the way, if the ACC were to completely crumble and fall apart, which is possible but not guaranteed, remember that Stanford, Cal, and SMU, one-time Pac-12 expansion target, are all in the ACC. They are all right there. So if you're the Pac-12 looking to assess the landscape of how do we rebuild, what's the best path, who can we invite and everything, you have to let that play out first. In the back of your mind, sure, if you're Teresa Gould, the commissioner, you should definitely be thinking about, okay, what should this look like? What do we want it to look like? And you should have conversations with President Murphy at Oregon State and President Schultz at Washington State. Hey, what schools would we be thinking about here? Who would we want to invite back in? What's our priority for building up this particular conference again, which they've stated is part of their goal and part of their mission as the new leaders and sole board members of the Pac-12. I think it has to include a wait and see approach, but you have to have conversations amongst yourself and perhaps with other universities about who you want to invite, what the priorities of the conference should be, and which, in my view, should be football and football alone, and what sort of media options you can explore. So the Pac-12 reportedly, that's just Oregon State and Washington State right now, they've got 13 home football games to sell to a television vendor, and it appears, according to John Canzano, that might be the CW. Now, that hasn't been set in stone at this time. It would be produced by the Pac-12 network infrastructure that still exists, but it would be broadcasted on the CW, who have had some ACC football games. They've got Live Golf as well. I think that's a solid option because it's accessible and you're going to get visibility and you're going to have the ability to get into television homes all across the country. Keep yourself relevant. Keep yourself discussed in the realignment world. That's where the danger comes in for Oregon State and Washington State. You've got to figure out how you stay on everyone's radar, recruits, conferences, everyone. That's got to be your priority. I think the CW does a pretty solid job of accomplishing that, and it's probably one of the better options that you'd have available. You need people to easily be able to watch your games. Pac-12 Network doesn't allow you to do that. The CW certainly would. And then their road games will be against the Mountain West or other power conference teams, and they've already got a television deal, so they're all set in stone. Drop your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Let me know what you think as always, or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter, at @SMcLaughlinCFB. What's the latest in Salt Lake City? Are the Utes ready to contend in the Big 12? We'll talk about that coming up next. First, let's talk about better together. Is your bracket already busted? Mine is. Are you tired of the same old daily fantasy grind where you make a roster, cross your fingers, and hope for the best? Or you're losing the last leg of your pick'em entry? Introducing Better Together, the first cooperative daily fantasy platform where teamwork triumphs talent and you can play with your friends, not against them. Pick more or less on real-time player stats, strategize with your partner to boost your odds, and climb the leaderboard together. So, grab a friend and join the social DFS movement. You can download Better Together, and right now, from the App Store, you can get it. Sign up using the promo code LOCKEDON for a chance to win your share of over $1,000 in cash prizes. Remember, it's more fun to do some with your friend. I'd rather play golf with my friend as a teammate than against him and try to beat him. And it's the same thing when it comes to betting here with Better Together. Remember, over $1,000 in cash prizes. Remember the code LOCKEDON because winning alone is fun, but it's better together. This episode also brought to you by our friends at Amazon Fire TV, your destination for sports. From live games to highlights to in-depth analysis, Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. They've created Fire TV channels to give you a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on the latest in the world of sports. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Utah is one of the betting favorites in the Big 12. How are they handling that going into spring football? Let's talk about that with JT Wistrcill, host of Locked On Utes, joining me here on the show. What is priority number one for Kyle Whittingham in year 76 in Salt Lake City?
It's definitely what it's beginning to feel like. Honestly, I think it's sort out the offensive line. I just trust the coaches so much in the secondary, and to a lesser extent, the offensive line too. Like, even though you lost Cole Bishop and Sione Vaki, like, you just have such a proven track record of defensive backs coming in and still producing at a high level and then transitioning and then doing it at the NFL level. Just saw Jalen Johnson get paid this offseason, for example. Cole Bishop's going to be a high draft pick too. So the Utah secondary train continues to roll on. But the offensive line was a little underwhelming last year. So I think that's the most important unit to get figured out. They have a 4-star from their 2023 class who's currently starting at left tackle right now. Didn't play last year. They had one of their other left tackles from a season ago who was a true freshman. He's now on the right side. So some guys who have gotten 1 or 2 years of experience there, but still some things to figure out along the offensive line. I like the players they have in place in there, but of all the units for Utah right now, it's probably the one I feel like, okay, I have the least confidence in. And so many other players are returning, right, for this team. So like Cam Rising, all these other ones, easy to be confident there. But I think the biggest one is getting the offensive line right, because look, Cam Rising has obviously battled injuries, so you need to keep him upright and healthy. And how you do that is with a strong offensive line that can not just protect Cam, but run the ball and take the pressure off him. Jim Harding's done a good job with the offensive line. I expect that group to be ready to go by the time the season comes, but still some things to sort out there, because there's a couple guys who are going to be starting there that aren't proven or maybe aren't coming off the best seasons.
The Utah Utes and the Kansas State Wildcats are, according to FanDuel, the 2 betting favorites to win the Big 12. Now, those would have been my selections, and they were here on the show before those odds came out as, I think these are the top 2 teams going into next year. I give the edge to Utah because I've got, a couple of veteran coaches in Chris Kleiman and Cal Whittingham with the Utes, but I've got a more veteran quarterback in Cam Rising compared to Avery Johnson, who's got a lot of potential but isn't quite as proven yet. So I don't have a doubt. I have a question about what he's going to be able to accomplish as the full-time starter with Will Howard now over at Ohio State. Do you feel right now like Utah is worthy? Is the sense around that program, Big 12 favorites here, got to appear in the Big 12 title game, college football playoff or bust? Is that the vibe around Utah football?
I would say, I feel that way. Kyle Whittingham will never let his team feel that way, right? He's going to look for the one person who says, look here, they say that we can't do it in our first year. Every coach, and especially one like Kyle Whittingham, who's old school, how can I make my team the underdog? How can I make us doubted any way he can? So Utah is doing everything in their power to talk themselves into not being the favorites. But myself, you already said you do too, and I think a lot of people are going to have Utah as one of the favorites in the Big 12, if not the favorite, because Cam Rising's coming back. He's one of the top returning quarterbacks in college football. Yes, I know he didn't play last year, but I do expect with this much time in recovery, I just like his odds to get back to that form more than I like a lot of these other quarterbacks who are maybe changing teams or just trying to do it on a higher stage. Can they do that? I'd rather trust in Cam in that regard. You get a Dorian Singer, which was one of this team's weakness last year, right? Pass catchers. You get a wide receiver who had 1,000-yard season just 2 years ago at USC, just too many mouths to feed there. So there's some okay receivers. I like the room of running backs Utah has. And I know I was talking, there's some questions along the offensive line. This is still a pretty solid group. Obviously, we wouldn't be talking about Utah as one of the favorites in the Big 12 if they had an insane amount of questions on the offensive line. There's just about 2 or 3 key pieces. But the big thing for Utah is obviously going to be the defense. This is a top 5 run defense in college football last year, and they lost a top pass rusher in Jonah Ellis. But everyone else is back. Literally all the D tackles, defensive ends, linebackers. It's a great unit led by the likes of Lander Barton, Karene Reed, Junior Tafuna's another guy up there, Connor O'Toole, a potential breakout player to watch. So the front seven's a game changer. And I already talked about how the secondary churns out NFL guys like crazy. Pair that with fantastic coaching, and I believe you have the makings rankings of not just a Big 12 contender, but a college football playoff contender for sure.
The Big 12 has not historically been known for defense the way that Utah has. And, the Utes have played in their fair share of blowouts. I think of the game in 2022 against USC, 43-42 at Rice-Eccles, in what was just a fantastic college football game. How do you see that contrasting style playing out between a lot of offense, not a lot of defense, to Utah wants to slow it down, run the football a bit, and can sometimes score a lot of points when needed?
This was an offense that when Cam Rising was running it, scored well over 30 a game back in 2022. So I do expect Utah to be able to keep pace with some of the higher scoring Big 12 teams. And honestly, in some of those matchups, I feel like Utah should be able to win, because while I expect Utah to score over 35, I feel like there's a lot of games that Utah is going to be able to hold teams under 30 because of how potent that defense is. Teams aren't going to be able to run the ball, as we highlighted. So you're going to become one-dimensional too. And Utah has some guys like a Zambaya Vaughn, who's a really experienced corner, as well as a lot of those other guys that I expect themselves to just assimilate themselves into that secondary very quickly. And this is going to be a balanced offense. I mean, Cam Rising is a special player for a reason. There is no other quarterback in college football right now, especially in the Power 4 rankings, that has led their team to back-to-back conference championships. Yes, I understand Cam Rising didn't do that in 2023, but he did it in 21 and 22, and he's coming back to lead this offense. You got Brant Keithy, who's one of the top tight ends in college football. Already mentioned some of the other receivers, as well as a stout running game. I really feel like this Utah team is in a strong position to be the class of the Big 12. It's one of the most well-balanced teams and rosters, and for those of you who think I'm absolutely crazy, I would just encourage all of you to look back and see what this Utah team has done under Cam Rising and why they have continued to be, and even under Kyle Whittingham, right? Like, they've just year in and year out been a top 15 program in college football. Don't expect that to change next year, as they were really that for a lot of the year without Cam Rising. What are they going to do with Cam Rising? I think some really special things come this fall.
A unique situation exists with the Utes football program. Cam Rising takes a year off and comes back for his 7th year of college football. Yes, it is year 7. That's not me being hyperbolic to crack a joke or whatever. But he is returning to a coaching staff that has the same head coach, the same offensive coordinator, and, though it doesn't necessarily affect him as much, the same defensive coordinator across the board. That is a rarity in college sports nowadays. And I have been very high on teams across the country, whether you're looking at, an Ole Miss or a Missouri or a Georgia in the SEC, anywhere you look, if you've got the same coach and quarterback, and especially coordinator as well as you had the prior year, I tend to like that level of continuity because they're the most important positions. So how does that shake out? After taking a year off and Rising was wearing a hoodie on the sidelines, had a headset on last year, do you think it's a seamless transition for him to just jump right back into the fold, and we should expect, assuming full health, which he should be able to get to, should we just expect to see the same player that was last on the college football field in 2022?
I think there's a really good chance we see the same player, and if not the same player, something very close to it. He's looked really good in spring ball. It's been fun to watch him out there and go and sling it a little bit, and we've gotten to see a little bit of him in a scrimmage. We'll have the spring game coming up where I expect to see him get maybe a drive or two, as normal is the case before the starters usually take a seat after that. But I do expect Cam to look pretty much like himself. Now, yes, maybe he'll start slow. Maybe there's a little bit of rust there, but I think he's going to shake it off. Utah's non-conference schedule is a joke as well. Like, it's super easy. Utah State, they play Utah State, but also Southern Utah is the one they start their season with. Baylor in Rice-Eccles Stadium. That's going to be another one that is.
Go T-Birds, baby.
Yeah, hey, you never know, right? Maybe you can, if you're hoping Cam Rising's really rusty in that one, I know for your sake when you're on the call for that one, but it's going to be really interesting to see how long it does take Cam. I don't expect him to, the very first game, look like one of the 10 best quarterbacks in college football. But when it matters most in November, I definitely think he's going to look like such. This is a guy who's a proven winner. Cam Rising, I would love to know how many times he's been featured in like SportsCenter's top 10. I bet it's very few and far between. But if there's one thing I know about Cam Rising, he's won. That's why I said one of the only quarterbacks, if not the only quarterback, who's won back-to-back conference championships, has made big plays, led a game-winning drive against the likes of Caleb Williams, and has 2 conference championships and Rose Bowl appearances under his resume because of his clutch plays. And I think he's going to be making a lot more of them come this 2024 season.
JT Wistrcill, Locked On Utes. Thanks so much for coming by. Enjoyed it as always, my man.
Thanks, Spencer.
Dylan Raiola is the quarterback at Nebraska with Matt Rhule in year 2. That's intriguing enough. Where can Raiola rank amongst Big Ten quarterbacks? First, this week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest, just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs. These guys were able to take it to the next level. The North Carolina Tar Heels are the Nissan Armada. This one seed is as hardcore as it gets out there, and it's no wonder they secured a spot in the Sweet 16 this Thursday against Alabama in the NCAA tournament. The Iowa State Cyclones can only be described as the Nissan Pathfinder. They've been thrilling to watch and have really created a lane for themselves, entering the tournament as one of the hottest teams in the country. They have a date with Illinois in the Sweet 16 this Thursday, and the NC State Wolfpack. That's got to be the Nissan Rogue, right? Of course, because they absolutely surprised us all with a powerful performance in their first two games of the tournament, with wins over Texas Tech and Oakland. They're set up to play Marquette in the Sweet 16. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop at nissanusa.com. This episode also brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. I cannot think of a true freshman quarterback in the entire country for whom spring football is more important than Dylan Raiola at Nebraska. So Raiola comes in, number one quarterback in the class, chooses the Cornhuskers. Matt Rhule in year two. I've talked about that before here on the show. Matt Rhule's year two as a college coach, he tends to, double-ish his win total from the year prior. Nebraska was 5-7 last year. I'm just going to let that, hang out there for a moment, as it were. But Raiola comes in to a Big Ten conference that has got new teams. You got Oregon, you got USC, you got Washington, you got UCLA. All this is just a tremendously deep conference, and at some level, it of course is. But in the quarterback sense, Dylan Raiola could be a top 3 quarterback in the league. That is 100% on the table, because when you go up and down this conference, there are not a lot of high-end quarterbacks. There just aren't. And look, Dylan Raiola is an enigma at some level because we haven't seen him take a college snap yet. And we have seen guys with the physical traits and all the intangibles on paper or at the high school level not translate to college football. That happens every single year at positions that include but are not limited to quarterback. So I think that Raiola, has kind of an element of mysteriousness or mystique about him, at least for me, because I think Nebraska is one of the most interesting teams, maybe the most interesting team that's flying under the radar in college football this year because of what Matt Rhule's track record is when he's at an institution for a second year. And then you bring in a potential true freshman quarterback who might be starting and who looks like he could be the start. Now, that's the other thing in spring football is my understanding is Matt Rhule has not yet named a starting quarterback for the Cornhuskers. So Raiola might have to, actually show that he's capable of winning the job. But if he does, if he starts to really pop, you think it's crazy to say he could be a top 3 quarterback in the Big Ten? Give me the quarterbacks who you can say, without question, no hesitation in your mind, are better than what Dylan Raiola is capable of becoming. Just think about it for a moment. Who are the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten right now? You can look at Dylan Gabriel at Oregon. Yeah, he's quite good. He's not, like NFL kind of good or anything, but he's quite good. Will Howard at Ohio State. Okay, yeah, no, he's solid. He's nothing special, but he's good. He's probably going to have the best year of his career. But again, is he going to fly up NFL draft boards? No, he's not. Drew Aller at Penn State. That's an intriguing option here because Aller has got immense arm talent and potential. It didn't all click exactly last year, but if he, takes a sophomore leap, then yeah, okay, Aller could be in the top 3 conversation, but that's not a guarantee. And then after that, you're looking around going, is it Curtis Rourke at Indiana coming over from Ohio the last couple of years where he's had a very successful career thus far in the Mid-American Conference? Like, those are the guys that have a high floor because I've seen them for at least one, if not multiple years in college football, and I feel confident saying their capabilities are X, Y, and Z. But none of those guys were as highly touted recruits as Dylan Raiola, save for maybe Drew Aller, but even then, Aller wasn't number one in his class. But Raiola was the top quarterback prospect in the country. Remember, this is a guy who was going to go play at Georgia, and then Matt Rhule in Nebraska swooped in and said, we'd like to offer you an opportunity. And he said, well, gee whiz, that sounds fantastic. I don't know who Michigan's starting at quarterback. It could be Alex Orji. There are other options available, but does anybody know? Does anybody feel like that's a top tier option in the conference? Like, overall, this conference, once again, is going to be a low scoring league, which is why you look at the two betting favorites, Ohio State and Oregon, and almost want to lean into them a little more. And then my favorite dark horse in the league, USC, because they just have the ability with their quarterback play to score more points. But even USC, right? Lincoln Riley is the quarterback whisperer in college football. Multiple Heisman Trophy winners, multiple number one overall picks. He's got 3 starters in the league, about to have a 4th. It's crazy. It's crazy, right? He's got Baker Mayfield, he's got Kyler Murray, he's got Jalen Hurts, and he will soon have Caleb Williams with the Chicago Bears. He's got a guy in Miller Moss who kind of scared off any potential transfers with the performance he put up in the Holiday Bowl victory over Louisville. It was a really impressive game. He went for over 400 yards. He had 6 touchdowns. Like, he went absolutely bonkers. But that was one game. I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan, and I remember once upon a time, there was this guy by the name of Matt Flynn. Any LSU fans listening out there? Matt Flynn had a similar game where it was one instance, end of the year, season prior, went for over 400 yards and multiple touchdowns with the Packers, and the Seahawks signed him to a big offseason contract. And it looked like that was going to be the start. And then this guy named Russell Wilson came along, and the rookie beat him out. And yeah, he was just better than Matt Flynn. Didn't start a game. Did not start a game for the Seattle Seahawks at quarterback. So I bring that up just to say that I saw Miller Moss's potential. I know that Miller Moss can be one of the best quarterbacks in this league. But do I feel like his floor is as high from a production standpoint as a Dylan Gabriel or a Will Howard who have many years of starting experience? No, of course not. It can't be. The same goes for Aiden Childs at Michigan State. Guy could be one of the best quarterbacks in the league this year if he has a great breakout season. But have we seen it before? No. So this conversation with Raiola, I think, really depends on him, because last year, anybody who watched Nebraska's offense knows that their quarterback play was, let's just call it, unimpressive. Jeff Sims was not the guy. He was a guy. He was not the guy. And so if Raiola comes in and starts, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility he could have a better season than Drew Aller. He's got the talent to do it. It's about everything clicking. Can he get comfortable? Can he adjust to the speed of the game? Can he pick up on the scheme? Can he pick up on the nuances of running a college offense, which is, just about in every single occasion, a lot more complex than what anyone was doing at high school, even if you were at one of the premier institutions in the country for high school football. You got to understand protection schemes. You got to understand there are more complex coverages from the defense. It's a lot to pick up, but spring football is when that is going to take place for Dylan Raiola and the Cornhuskers. And I am more than a little fascinated to see how that all plays out, because I think you could realistically live in a world where Howard and Gabriel at some level are your top 2 quarterbacks in the Big Ten, and Raiola's right there at number 3. And heck, Will Howard hasn't put up gaudy numbers in his career. He's been in, a more run-centric team with Kansas State, and certainly Chip Kelly and Ryan Day will run the football. That's foundational to what they do offensively. They're not running an air raid up there in Columbus or anything of the sort. But do I expect Will Howard to be in the Heisman category? I don't know that the Big Ten has got a Heisman caliber quarterback in it. I don't see who it is. I'm an Oregon guy, and I think Dylan Gabriel is really good. Last year, Gabriel had an excellent season. 3,600 yards, 30 touchdowns, 6 picks, ran for 12 touchdowns and 400 to 500 yards. That's a really, really good year. Oklahoma went 10-2. He didn't sniff the Heisman Trophy. Did not sniff it. Was maybe in the conversation briefly for a moment when Oklahoma was undefeated, but I don't think that he's got the capability to put up the sorts of numbers to where if the team isn't having an absolutely amazing, like borderline undefeated season, he's going to garner Heisman Trophy attention. So, I think Gabriel is quite good and proven. And I think Will Howard is good and proven, but there is not a lot of high-end quarterback play in this league. Dylan Raiola could insert himself into the Big Ten and be one of the best signal callers early in his career. He's got all the physical tools. It's going to be about what he's got between the ears to figure out how to adapt to the college game. Big, big spring on hand for Raiola and the Cornhuskers. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.